Hi everyone, welcome to or back to my channel. Thanks for all the support on my college videos. If you want to check out my college decision reactions or a video I posted a few days ago about stats, extracurriculars, and classes, go check out the links in the description below. This video is just going to focus on essays. I'll be covering what to write essays about, what makes a good essay, and then at the end, 10 tips for writing amazing supplemental essays. So let's get right into it. First, I want to talk about a timeline and strategy for tackling essays. I ended up applying to 19 schools and having to submit just over 85 supplemental essays to my colleges, I believe. It's really important that when you're applying to college, you have a solid game plan and map out exactly when you need to be writing essays, when apps are due, etc. So first off, I'd say start the process early. What I did and what I would suggest to you is to make a master spreadsheet in early August of all of your school's essay prompts. Then group similar prompts together in what are called super essays. So for example, Brown asked in one of my supplements, tell us about a place or community you call home. The University of Michigan asked, choose one of the communities to which you belong and describe that community and your place within it. And then the UC schools, including UCLA and Berkeley, ask, what have you done to make your school or community a better place? Other schools also inquire about similar issues relating to community. So at the beginning of the application process, I grouped all of these prompts together and then wrote what's called a super essay. So what's so cool about a super essay is that it attacks multiple prompts at once. So not only did this save me a ton of time, but it also resulted in stronger, more powerful, and more vulnerable essays, just because I had to address so many more issues, like how I contributed to a community, how it shaped me, what I learned from being a part of it, etc. After I had compiled these super prompts, I laid out all of the other questions on my spreadsheet and then assigned due dates for each essay depending on my application timeline. So I ended up applying to Stanford, UVA, and the University of Michigan early, so I obviously put those deadlines in October because they had a due date of November 1st for the applications. So I wanted all my essays to be done as far in advance as possible. So I would suggest to you to make a timeline of when each school's supplements needs to be written, edited, and submitted. Just to give you guys an idea, I left myself 4 or 5 days for editing and reworking essays before the submission deadline, and I'd like to submit all of my applications at least 2 or 3 days early for each school. Next, I want to discuss what you should be writing your supplemental essays about. So for me personally, the biggest things that I wrote about were community and service. Some of the big highlights as far as that topic went were my involvement in my Jewish community. So I was a Hebrew tutor within my Jewish community for 3 years. I prepared students for their bar and bat mitzvahs. So in a great deal of my essays, especially the ones talking about community, like I just talked about, I discussed how I contributed to my Jewish community, how much I enjoyed working with my students, what kind of things I taught them, and kind of the unconventional ways that I was a tutor. So that was a really big deal for me. I ended up actually submitting that one super essay to 10 schools, so it saved me a lot of time. Another big kind of community service aspect I talked about was with STEAM On. So I talked about this a little bit in my last video, but I founded an equitable education nonprofit the spring of my junior year that provides free tutoring and mentorship to underrepresented and underserved communities. So I talked a lot about why I was passionate about educational access and equity in education, as well as what the organization did, what my role in it, why I started it, that kind of thing. The other kind of community topic that I wrote about quite a bit was my political campaign that I was involved in. So I worked for 3 Democratic women in Idaho, and they ended up all being elected to office, which was super cool. So I discussed in great detail in some of my supplemental essays what my role was like within that campaign, why it was so meaningful to me as a woman in a conservative state to be able to fight for female Democrats, that kind of thing. So that was a big theme in a lot of my essays. As far as what to write about in your essays, my advice would be to write essays about the things that you're passionate about. You don't need to win the International Math Olympiad or get a gold at the Intel Science Talent Search or get an Olympic medal or anything crazy like that. You just need to be a person who is involved and dedicated, and then be able to explain what it is that makes you special within the context of those things. So my recipe to a winning supplemental essay has 3 ingredients. First, you want an intriguing narrative or story to draw the reader in. Second, you need to show clear passion and heart. And third, demonstrate mutual fit. So let's talk about some of those factors. My test at the end of each of my essays was to read through what I had written and make sure that nobody else on earth could say, oh, me too. So you should really be writing about experiences, characteristics, involvements, communities, whatever. that are unique to you and only you. So you want to make your essays personal and vulnerable. Second, write essays that come from the heart. I know it can be scary and uncomfortable to get super in touch with who you are and like very touchy-feely on this essay that you know someone else is going to be reading. But if you can tug at the heartstrings of an admissions officer, and I don't mean in like a sob story kind of way, because you don't need a sob story, but in a way that makes the person reading your application care about you and feel closer to you in the process, that's super powerful and definitely helps you get admitted to top schools. And then third, demonstrate you and the college's mutual fit. Explain not only why you want to go to X school, but why they should want you too. So when you're writing an essay, sure, you want to go to Stanford, so does every other kid who's applying. You need to show why you're going to be a valued and important member of their campus, their community, within the classroom context and beyond. Now I'm just going to discuss 10 essay tips to help you get accepted to top schools. My first and biggest tip is to write essays about your why. Why you do the things you do, why you want to go to X school, why you're unique. Your why factor is the main reason why schools are going to admit you. It's not about what you scored on the SAT, how high your GPA was, how many years you've been on the track team. They're really looking for why you and the school are perfect for one another. Why the things in your life that are important to you are so important to you. Why you're a product of where you came from and your background and all your amazing, unique experiences. So writing essays about your why is going to really help you get accepted. Second, reflect, do not just summarize. The content of your essay shouldn't be visible or acknowledged in any other aspect of your application. It's not a resume or an extracurricular list or a transcript, so don't write about any of those things. You need to discuss in your essays how an experience has changed you, what you've learned, what was challenging, how you've grown. Colleges aren't looking for you to just spit out another version of what they've already seen on your application. They want something that they couldn't read about anywhere else, and you're going to need to get very in touch with yourself, very personal and very vulnerable in order to be able to achieve that. My third tip is don't try too hard. If you're not a funny person, don't go cracking jokes in your essays. Write what comes naturally to you. Don't try to be someone you're not in your essays. These stories and experiences are your own, and you can handle them however you want to handle them. My fourth tip is in your essays to demonstrate growth. The most important part of your essay is you. You should really be explaining how an experience or involvement has affected and influenced you, what you've learned, how you've grown as a result. So what you really want to show is not only like summarize what the narrative was or what kind of experience you've been through, but talk about how it's contributed to shaping you as a person, what you've learned from it, what traits you've adopted as a result. So for example, if you're writing that community essay like I brought up earlier, talk about how your community has shaped you and how you've shaped it, how you've grown as a person as a result of being a part of it, stuff like that. Fifth, be specific. Your essay shouldn't be a 30,000-foot bird's eye view of you as a person. It should be up close and personal. You really want to tell the whole story. Make the reader feel like they're there with you. So kind of along with that tip, involve the 5 senses in your narration. Talk about what the experience was like, what you saw, what you smelled, what you heard. Really make your admissions officer feel like they're there with you, experiencing the same things you are, and then they can get more in touch with not only your story, but with you as an applicant. My 6th tip is to not force it. The perfect opening line or insight doesn't come when you're sitting at your desk the day before a deadline trying to crank out an essay. Be ready to encounter some writer's block along the process. So, give yourself plenty of time away from your words just to relax and let your brain work its own little magic. You shouldn't try to force your writing because the best essays come when you don't expect them. I know when I was stuck personally, I'd get up, take a walk around the neighborhood, change my perspective a little bit, and then word vomit. Write a few random things down, whatever comes to mind. Don't put pressure on yourself to pen a Pulitzer Prize winning, personal statement or essay or anything. So just kind of sit back, know that the process is working out how it's meant to work out. You're not going to be able to write an amazing essay every time you sit down to do it. So give yourself plenty of time to ease in, let yourself relax and think a little bit. My 7th tip is to write like you talk. You don't need to use big words to impress admissions officers. In fact, writing your logo file may actually frustrate them more than it flabbergasts them. So be sure to write like you'd actually speak, because admissions officers know that you're a 17 or 18-year-old human being. You don't need to sound like a Rhodes Scholar or like you wrote the dictionary. Tip number 8, explain your so what. By so what, I mean the why should we care factor. So at the end of your essay, I shouldn't be able to say, wow, that was a nice story. I should say, now I get it, or now I feel like I really understand who you are. Your essay shouldn't just be you recounting a series of events. It should be you reflecting on the experience, why it mattered to you, why you're telling me about it, if I'm an admissions officer. 9th, dive right in. Your essay should never begin with some kind of a qualification or an explanation. Really get right into the meat of your essay. Get right to the attention grabber. For example, I know my 650-word main essay for Princeton began like this, and I have it written down right in front of me. I attribute much of my personal development to a fictional anthropomorphic bear. First name Winnie, last name the Pooh. So with this diving right in tip, I suggest looking over your essay, after you've written it, and delete the first sentence or two. See where that lands you in the context of your story, and then play around with your hook. So, for example, with my Winnie the Pooh Princeton essay, I don't introduce the narrative as I reflect back on my experience reading books as a child or something like that. There's no, fluff at the beginning of the essay. And my 10th and final tip is don't write about what you think someone else wants to hear. Write about what you want to say. The whole essay and college application process is about showing admissions who you are as a person, not appealing to what you think they would expect from you or what you think they'd want from you. Just realize that you're at the center of this process. Be a little selfish. Do what you want to do. Don't cater to what you'd expect someone else would want to hear. And my final bonus tip is just to have trust in the process. You'll end up where you're meant to end up. So those are all my tips. If you'd like me to read some of my essays, write a comment below. If you want to see other videos from me on the college or scholarship application process, standardized testing, etc., let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to make them. But thank you all for watching, and I hope this was helpful.